Doggone it, this is a flash drive. Whatever. So, as you can see, we brought you to the Mafia of Wyoming. Now you're probably thinking, Wyoming? Well, I say, why not Oming? But guess what? This isn't the time for that. Because you knew you had us in a bargain. One that we promised to hold up our part when you did not. What do you have to say in your defense?
Good sir, you do realize that I have nothing to say.
Man, we need to take him to the torture chamber. Take him away.
I beg your pardon, sir, but I recommend you turn around first to see your visitor. He seems to have quite something that he needs from you, good sir.
Oh yeah, right. You can't fool us. We're the Mafia. We have the upper hand here. So if you want to try and trick us, get ready for the old 1, 2. Okay then. What I meant to say then, instead of the old 1, 2, was the old 1, 2. The Mafia Mobilio! Away! Greetings, comrades, and hello everyone, I'm Quint866. Now, I'm going to be reviewing a game that, honestly, I dislike. I don't like to use the word H-A-T-E because it's a bit of a strong word. Plus, I want to set a good example for the kids, so, yeah. The game, in case you couldn't read the cover of either of those games that were talking to me in the introduction, one of them was Caesar's Palace 2000, which honestly is one of the worst PS1 games I've ever had. Not because it's bad or incompetently designed, but I got it for free, which might sound good, but it didn't satisfy me. Like, I honestly had more fun playing World Series of Poker on the PS2 than, you know, that. So yeah, the other game was Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 3. Now, as we all know, I love Bugs Bunny. He's a great cartoon character. And some of his video games were pretty neat, like Bugs Bunny Lost in Time. Amazing, and very long at that. Other games like, you know, Taz Wanted, good. Pretty dang solid. But for games like Crazy Castle 3, who have only heard the AVGN talk about, horrible. My lord, this game is horrible. And what's worse is that I still have the cartridge for this. I can't find a place to sell this anywhere. And probably after viewing this video, you're probably not going to want to buy it in the first place. Because, admittedly, similar to Bugs Bunny Lost in Time, it's a platformer, but 2D. And you're probably thinking, oh, that sounds good for the Game Boy Advance. We need more of those. Fine. But here's my main complaint about Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 3. Sorry about that. Is that you can't jump. I mean, seriously, how do you call this a platforming game if you can't jump? And Bugs Bunny's a rabbit! He should be able to jump! He's a rabbit! How do you expect him to get away from all Yosemite Sam's bullets? He needs to move and jump and evade and roll and all... Oh my god. Seriously, how can you call this a platformer? Because reasons!
How can you call a platforming game a platformer when you can't jump?
I mean, sure, Burger Time, that had ladders, to say the least. And doors, and stairs, whatever. This game has the biggest ripoff, especially from a good platformer, Mario, pipes. And a couple warp pads or jump pads, but you can't jump on your own. I mean, seriously now, there's an A and a B button. Why not use them? I mean, sure, they use the B button for one of the things, which is the attack, if you have the item that allows you to attack. And I think I want to say the select or A button scrolls through which of the items that allow you to attack. But the other buttons, start, which pauses obviously, and select, they're not, you don't really need them. So why? Why? I mean, guys, I didn't even buy this game. My brother and sister just had it and they said, hey, you can have him. I'm like, oh boy, Bugs Bunny, I love him. What's up, Doc? Well, anyways.
Yeah, I remember slapping this cartridge into the slot of the Game Boy Color, powering it up, hitting that start button after hearing the glorious jingle from the logo screen, and then I got this. Which actually isn't too bad, I'll admit. I mean, the introduction sequence was pretty good, the graphics are nice, and admittedly the plot, while it isn't too complex, it's okay for the time. And I'll admit, there's only one real complaint I can say about the plot, is that they never explain what happens in the second and first game, because, you know, this is the third game. But luckily, I had known of the first two games, thanks to a comic, but not a lot of other people may have had the chance I did. The plot is surprisingly simple for, you know, a Bugs Bunny game. The simple plot is, Bugs Bunny finds a book in an antique store, reads it, and it says, or tells him that there's a treasure in an old spooky castle. And since, you know, Bugs Bunny likes treasure, or carrots at least, he wants to go get it, and he goes there. But considering that this is Bugs Bunny, and he's very smart in the cartoons, you'd probably think, wait, he's done this 2 times now. And now that I'm on the fact that this is the third game, I want to say that this is another complaint. One of the only complaints I have about the plot is that it doesn't tell you what happens in the first 2 games, and why Daffy Duck, Tweety, Taz, and all your friends are trying to kill you now. Yeah, that's a huge hole. I mean, like, sure, you can tell Taz maybe might want to get Bugs, but for Daffy and Tweety, that's not quite the same story. You either have to piece it together, get the comic, or play the first 2 games, which isn't too hard, but as a kid, in these times, it would have been maybe a bit harder. However, this game gets unfair. But not to talk about that. The plot for the first 2 games, which connects it to this game, is simple. You basically have the villain character, who actually doesn't appear in this game, believe it or not, and only really appears in the second game, known as Hazel the Witch. She obviously is the villain, and she puts all the Looney Tunes characters except for Bugs under a spell that allows her to control them. Basically mind control. Then, Bugs, as he goes over to the castle, Witch Hazel uses Bugs' friends to try and, you know, stop his progress, or trying to make sure he doesn't get there in the first place. I mean, honestly, the plot isn't really that, you know, interesting, but at least it's as good as it can be for the time. And the biggest complaint, as I said before, is that it doesn't tell you what happens in the previous 2 games, but as I said before, it's a limited system, so I guess I can't complain that hard. Anyways, that's the plot of the original first 2 games about Witch Hazel. Even though you killed her in the second game, for some reason she still has control over the Looney Tunes characters in this game. Not a very consistent plot, but hey, I guess you could say it's maybe like a her soul controls them or something like that. Her ghost, I don't know. But the plot of this game is that Bugs Bunny wants to find the treasure, and I guess since Taz was still under the influence of Hazel or whatever, he finds out because he was in the window in the introduction sequence, no joke, and he informs the rest of the people guarding the castle that Bugs wants to go and steal the treasure that Hazel hid away. And the treasure itself isn't really a treasure. I mean,
I'll get to the ending later where they tell you what the actual treasure is, but honestly, the treasure isn't like... I mean, sure, it's good to see what the treasure is, and it's good to see it, you know, finally be revealed, but it just didn't feel that worth it, considering all the hassle you had to go through. Now, if you want to know what makes me hate this game so much, other than some few plot holes and ability lacks, is the unfair difficulty. This game has some of the most unfair platforming, not just because of the lack of abilities, but because sometimes the enemies can be really hard. Not only because in some stages they are everywhere, and admittedly, since you can't jump, there's not an easy way to avoid them, so if you get cornered by them, you're screwed. Yep, that's the truth. Another thing is that if you go in a door and the enemy's right next to the door, you have barely any time to react, and the enemies don't go back to their original position, they just stay where they were. Oh my god, that's unfair. Not only that, but since you can't find a way to easily counter the enemies, it's luck most of the time if you beat the stages, or knowing the pattern or layout of the stages in the first place. And honestly, the game is pretty repetitive. You find all 8 keys, go through the exit door, go down to the next stage. But it's just so difficult to execute. Anyways, after a long grind through the game, which in my terms was using a password that took me forever to figure out, until I knew what the internet was, I finally get to the last stage where Taz is there? Okay, I admit it, he wasn't in the beginning and he was in the window, but come on, Witch Hazel should have been here. I mean, honestly. And people call this a boss fight. Look at it! You don't even hit Taz! There's no weapons, no bombs, no power-ups, you just avoid him, so how is this a boss fight when you can't even hit the boss? I mean, what the heck? It's not a boss fight, it's just a chase, or survival mode, I don't care, but it's not a boss. Stop calling it that, people. And honestly, the music in this stage is okay, but I honestly feel like this was one of the lamest ways to end the game. I mean, if anything, I'd wish this game had a boss like it did in Crazy Castle 2, which admittedly it was a boss, yes, and it was Witch Hazel, but it wasn't that fun, and honestly guys, I mean, it wasn't that hard either. But I don't know guys, this wasn't a very good ending to a game, and honestly, Taz, it was kind of sad because I wanted to beat the piss out of Witch Hazel again. And Taz is one of my favorite characters in Looney Tunes, period. Other than Bugs Bunny and Yosemite Sam, Taz is honestly one of my favorites. But enough about that. Now for the ending where you get to the treasure itself. You open the box, and it's your girlfriend. No joke. Literally, your treasure is your girlfriend. And she now is happy to have you, and Bugs doesn't look too happy despite him being smooched. Wow. Guys, it's not worth going back to this game if you want to have fun. If you want to have a rage game, play this, but don't buy it. Emulate it. I mean, my god. You know what? No. I've had it. This game existed in my house for far too long. Especially because, I mean, sure, I admit it, there's gonna be bad games somewhere. But it does not mean that they can disgrace a bad game with one of my favorite cartooning characters, period. I'm taking this game somewhere where it will be destroyed by the dragons. And if you all know what I mean by dragons, you should know I'm going to Skyrim. Let's go. For Skyrim!